My father was a police officer. The morning of the test that I was supposed to take the test, I almost skipped out. I was trying to go out the back door of the house to go to Martha's Vineyard, and he stopped me. And so I ended up taking the test. I ended up passing, and I got on real young. I got on when I was 22, which fortunately that way, I can retire early and wrap it all up at a young age. This is me. I think that's Captain America underoos. And that's my brother chowing down on some potato chips. Oh, look at it. An apple. And we still both eat the same. He still eats potato chips. I haven't converted him yet. My dad's badge number is 182. He was a detective with the department for 20 plus years. He passed away a few years back from cancer. And then they gave me his badge number, so I now carry 182. So I kept this, and this is a quote that a friend of mine named Celine Susi gave to me. Every decision you make stems from what you think you are and represents the value that you put upon yourself. So this is basically the last thing that I see going out the door on the way to work every day.
The speed at which our lives are unfolding for the average person in an industrialized society, it's too fast. We're not present, we're not in the moment. We're not with our loved ones enough. We're not breaking bread together, enjoying a communal meal together. We're worrying about things that are sometimes, at the end of our career. We're worrying about retirement. We're worrying about our investments. We're worrying about making one meeting after the next.
There's now just a huge amount of research showing that the actual hormones and neurotransmitters that your body produces and secretes when you're stressed lead to so many of these chronic diseases like cancer and heart disease.
The public is ill. They're overweight and they're ill. Over the age of 30, almost everybody in this country is sick. 2/3 of the people are overweight. Well over 30% are on medication over the age of 30, and about half have risk factors like high cholesterol, high blood pressure, high blood sugar that predict that they're going to have a less than ideal life.
We have a classification called morbid obesity. They're now coming up with one called morbidly morbid obesity. We're getting fat. We are the fattest people in the history of the world, and we're getting fatter.
I was told by my university teacher, the first nutrition class that I had, and the funny thing is, the first day of class, he walked into the classroom, and his belly literally came in the door before he did. And he proceeded to tell me about health and how to lose weight.
Most Americans are living in the dark ages of nutrition. And they're eating a diet style that not only is, not nutritionally sufficient, but it actually is so dangerous, causing, unnecessary tragedies, needless deaths, and tremendous amount of suffering. People don't understand that they're digging their graves with their knives and forks.
And then when you get a headache, the doctor comes and gives you pain-relieving pills, toxic. Or if you have a joint ache or this ache or that ache, the doctor comes with more drugs, more chemicals, and people have long lists of chemicals that they have to take or to live on. The doctors say you can't stop it. People are toxic, seriously toxic.
In 1945, 1 cup of spinach had a certain amount of minerals. To get the amount of minerals in 1 cup of spinach in 1945, we have to eat 65 cups right now. That's how depleted our soil is. There's 12,000 additives being added to our food right now.
What's happening now is kind of the summation of many different types of lifestyles which are out of accordance with natural order. And nobody's at fault, we just made mistakes we didn't know, and so we experimented with eating chemicals, junk food, all different kinds of really toxic types of animal foods, toxic plant foods, and now we washed up onto the beach and we're sick. So now we've got to figure out, how do we get well?
I read a quote somewhere that every bite is a brushstroke, and they say, you know, every chance you get to get a vegetable or fruit inside, get it, you know. So anytime anybody offers me one, could be walking by the main desk, someone will have a bag of carrots. You want one, Eric? Absolutely. You know, eat them all while they're doing the report. People say, you know, how do you not want to, you know, just rip into a steak? And I don't know what drives people to want to do that, emotional eating or whatever it is, or why they want a coffee, or maybe they just never tried what I have tried. And I thank my lucky stars that whatever it is that came into my life made me try this, because it's the best thing I have in my life is the way I eat. There's no two ways about that. It grounds me, it keeps me happy, it keeps me stress-free. It makes me enjoy workouts, whereas maybe years ago when I was working out, but not eating as well, I liked when my workout was over. It takes zero willpower for me. Like, yo, you have just so much willpower, and I'm like, I'd love to take that credit, like I have all this like awesome willpower, but truly what it is I crave it. You know what I mean? This is a hot fudge sundae to me. You know, you could put a piece of pizza and it just wouldn't interest me at all.
I didn't know Eric was that old. Not that he's old, but when I saw him, I thought he was like 30, 31, you know, he just has so much energy. So he's been here almost 20 years in the department. I didn't know that. I've only been here 9. I met him like this. Well, when people tell me before, he used to be kind of heavy, you know, always eating differently, you know, just eating bad. And I didn't witness the change. So I've met him the way he is today. But you speak to the other guys about him, they're like, oh yeah, doesn't he look great from before? And I'm like, what was before?
I remember Eric back probably 10 years ago. He was probably 30 to 40, probably 50 pounds heavier than he is now. He wasn't healthy, you know. Eric now, he eats total vegan, you know. He eats, you could basically say he's like a cow. He grazes all day.
Before I did this, I would go, you know, I had typical American diet where it was, you know, coffee, hardly ever drank any water, you know, and just sub shops. You know, I don't really remember exactly how I felt, but I know if I just did that for one day right now that the chances are I probably would finish that day by going home and just watching television. I wouldn't even dare to try going to the gym. Right in hook.
Charles Dickens, in his Tale of Two Cities, opened the book with, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." And 200 years later, it's the best time ever, it's the worst time ever. It's both. And I will bet my money that what we're going to see is a continuation of that. That what we're going to see is whatever choice you want will be accelerated to an incredible destiny, either to your benefit or to your detriment. It just depends on what your choice is. So for example, if somebody's choice is, I don't care, I give up, it doesn't matter, you know, it's too late, then they will accelerate to the worst ever in a way that was never even possible before. Just in the same ways, if somebody says, no, it's possible, I can create a future that is incredible, there is hope in the world, there's love in the world, the best food ever is possible, the best water ever is possible, the best herbal medicine ever is possible, then they will accelerate to a destiny that they cannot even imagine.
Everything that you eat affects the way you think, affects the way you feel, and it literally affects the printout or the receipt that you get of your body. Your body is basically a receipt for all the food that you've invested in. So when people see you, they see your receipt. You know, so we want to really be more proactive and empowered by this, you know, versus I'm made of gummy bears and goldfish crackers and cheeseburgers being made of the best food on the planet.
Well, I was pretty much overweight my entire life. From the age of 5, I was the cute, chubby kid that everybody wanted to pinch his cheeks, and went up to being overweight and then obese. And then right around that time, they coined a new term, which was morbidly obese, until finally I hit 400 pounds. And as you can imagine, that was a very scary time in my life. I tried over 30 different diets. None of them worked. I was on the verge of having gastric bypass surgery, went through all the tests to get ready for that. And at the very last minute, I decided that that wasn't for me. I was reading a book about fasting and they mentioned the words raw food. And I knew they weren't talking about sushi, but it had to be something important because I kept getting drawn to it. And I literally went out and bought about 20 different books, started researching them, and made the switch overnight to 100% raw food lifestyle, raw being fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, all in their uncooked form. And before that, I was probably having 7,000 plus calories a day, 2 to 3 meals fast food. So it's pretty intense of a change, but I'm a bit of an extremist. I wanted to give it a go. And I lost the weight so fast that, I mean, it was the first time in my life I actually lost more than 20 pounds.
I think the common denominator amongst all of these patients who I've seen really make a remarkable turnaround in their health is that they were empowered, that they believed they could do it. And with that said, I've seen a number of patients lose in excess of 100 pounds in relatively, moderate time spans. We're not talking years here, we're talking less than a year.
Within the first 3 months, I stepped on a scale, and this wasn't a regular scale. I had to go to the hospital, I had to go to the gastric bypass section and get permission to use their scale because my scale at home didn't work. My scale in my doctor's office didn't go high enough. And as I got on this scale, I realized in 3 months I had lost 55 pounds with just diet change alone, no exercise. And then that year I continued on. In the first year I lost 100 pounds. And something hit, automatically I had this revelation. I said, oh my God, the power of food. I never realized it. So many times people said, you have to go to the gym, you have to do this and that.
And the core of that really, Drew, was they got back to a diet which was centered around fresh fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, very small amounts of animal protein, not a significant amount of refined food in their diet. So it was a diet that humans have eaten for thousands and thousands of years, and once they got back to it, well, their health really reflected that.
My belt size changed. I was a 5 extra large shirt and a size 58 pants. And but besides the weight change, I ended up leaving my job of 11 years to pursue my passion. I started doing public speaking around the world, helping other people. And my relationships changed, my spirituality changed, my confidence changed, the way I interacted with women changed. And I just started to really enjoy life for the first time. Whereas before I was just waking up depressed and sad every single day. So the long answer to your question is the food was the catalyst for so much more than I ever expected. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be able to take part in this amazing journey.
The Gerson therapy was developed many, many, many years ago, actually in the late 20s and early 30s, by my father, Dr. Max Gerson. He wasn't a medical doctor. And he sort of accidentally, you know how these things are, when you find scientific materials accidentally, that when you change your diet, you change your entire physiology and you can heal things. And he accidentally found out that when he changed his diet to cure his own migraine headaches, it also helped a patient who happened to have skin tuberculosis. You couldn't heal just one disease. When you use the right nutrition and you restore the body's ability to heal itself, it would heal everything.
Guys will come to me. That's usually when someone will come and ask me, what should I eat for this, is when it's a little bit too late, when they have a problem. Maybe diabetes, Crohn's disease, different things like that, or the doctor says, you got high blood pressure, or, and they'll come to me and they'll say, what can I add to my diet to fix this? Guys that'll quit smoking, that type of thing. And I always wish that I could just snap my fingers and get them. And I always say this, I say, if you could eat the way I eat for a month, if I could just force you to eat the way I eat for a month, you'd never eat any way again. It wouldn't work for a week, wouldn't work for 3 days. You'd feel deprived and your body would probably go through some type of withdrawal from all the bad stuff that they're putting in there. But I always wish that I could do that for people, that I could just snap my fingers. People are getting their intestines cut out a couple feet at a time because they have Crohn's disease, and a medical doctor will tell them, will cut them open and gut them rather than tell them to stop eating potato chips and Snickers bars. It should be illegal, really, you know, when you think about it. But, I don't know.
I come from a family of medical doctors, and I grew up in that environment. I grew up in that environment of hospitals, emergency rooms, doctors' offices, house calls with my dad when I was a kid. And so I've been uniquely prepared with an interesting viewpoint for the life's work that I have, which is to really find out what medicine is all about and to really dig into medicine that's available to the people, that the people can understand.
When I was 20 years old, I was diagnosed with something called degenerative disc disease. So essentially my spine was deteriorating very fast. And I went to see my traditional doctor, and he put the MRIs up for me to see, and he told me that I had the spine of an 80-year-old. And to hear that when you're 20 is pretty shocking. And it sent my life on a tailspin downward very fast. Because not being completely ignorant, I went and seeked out other expert opinions, you know, so I got a second opinion, third opinion, fourth opinion, and all the doctors told me the same thing, that this was a situation that was incurable and I couldn't do anything about it. Now, the funny thing is, with that first doctor, I had the wherewithal to ask him, was there anything that I can do to fix this? Should I change my diet? Should I change the way I'm exercising? And he looked at me kind of in pity, and he said that this has nothing to do with what you're eating. And then he wrote me a prescription to eat some pills.
The medical system is increasingly and onerously expensive. It's bankrupting people, it's bankrupting companies. It's toxic in many cases. It does some good, but it does some damage at the same time. There's always side effects to every drug. It has a place in trauma care, it has a place, I'm not trying to put it down, but I'm saying that we've lost touch with our ability to prevent disease in the first place.
All people hear about is detecting cancer and treating it through the medical profession. Nobody's focusing on what can we do to never get it to begin with. And I think that people are living in a fairy tale to think that we're going to invent some magic pill we're going to pop in our mouth and we'll not get cancer. Life isn't a fairy tale. We choose to eat the foods that result in the problems that we develop in life. Why not choose to eat foods that maximize our health?
You know, I watched my father die from cancer, and I actually had a friend die from leukemia last year, and I watched both of them. The same exact thing happen. I know it's a touchy subject when you get into heavy medications like that, but at the end, it was a battle as to what was putting them down worse, what was killing them worse, you know. And at the end, it was the medication. The medication was just pounding away, I remember, at my father's body and the different side effects that he was getting.
When we go to medical school, we're taught to treat symptoms. And we look at something with this kind of cut, burn, and poison paradigm.
So much of the healthcare costs that the system is burdened with now have been totally preventative. It's been sound nutrition, stress reduction, daily exercise or movement. You know, these are the only things that if you look at the timeline, if you really launch a trajectory out from any point in an individual state of disease, those are the things which have been shown to make a change.
My friend and colleague, who's a nephrologist, one day he turned to me, we were at a meeting together, and he said, "You know, Daphne, it's really amazing to me. People don't seem to be able to take the half hour or hour they need in their day in order to make themselves healthy food and exercise. But when their kidneys fail, they sure have that 4 to 5 hours a week to go sit there and just get hooked up to a dialysis machine."
We call it health care, but it really would be more accurate to call it disease care. Because our medical system, what it does is it diagnoses disease once it's already there. Then comes in with treatments, usually surgery and pharmaceutical medications and so forth. But what about preventing those illnesses from occurring in the first place, building up health? We need to create a culture of wellness.
Meet Shirley Mislimov, probably the world's oldest man. This mountain villager claims to be 163. and he credits hard work and a simple life for his longevity. The Caspian Sea region has dozens of centenarians.
Studies have shown that the places on this earth where people live the healthiest and longest lives, where the elders are looked up to not just as reservoirs of wisdom, but also because they're vibrant and strong people still. They still are giving, they're still connecting, they're still part of the community in a really significant way. Those, what we can look and say, well, what do they have in common? What are the attributes of those cultures? What are they doing that seems to be working?
I found it to be absolutely remarkable what is possible in areas of the world where people move every day, eat a plant-based, whole foods type of diet that is centered in their local agricultural system. Foods aren't coming from the other side of the globe. Things are grown right there in that valley.
But they found these villages in China where you really couldn't get a heart attack, you couldn't get diabetes, and the women could not get breast cancer. And these friends of mine from Cornell University and Oxford University went into these villages. What's going on? Well, you work in the fields 12 hours a day, eating rice, beans, tofu, veggies 3 times a day, meat twice a year. Total cholesterol 127. Heart attack rate virtually 0, diabetes. You know, why is the breast cancer 0? Well, we think it's because they're on largely a plant protein diet, like those ladies in Japan. Born in Japan, raised on a plant protein diet, don't get breast cancer. Their sisters, however, who migrate, Honolulu, San Francisco, catch up to the high breast cancer rate of American women adopting the American diet.
The patient in my practice who was originally from Brazil, and her family for many generations came from a very small village that was on the banks of the Amazon River. And she had, in her lifetime, emigrated first to Rio, and then from there to San Francisco. And by the time I saw her, she was in her late 30s and had a number of chronic health problems. She was battling her weight, was quite overweight. She had depression, she had osteoarthritis of the knees, so degenerative joints in the knees that was probably largely due to her weight. She had borderline high blood pressure and borderline diabetes. And a couple months before she came to see me, she actually had gone back to her family's village in Brazil on the banks of the Amazon River and had spent a couple months there. And while she was there, without any particular health goal in mind, she noticed that she was getting healthier. And then she came back to San Francisco and all her problems started to come back again. And it was at that point that she came and had her first visit with me and said to me, I really want to figure out what was causing that jungle effect.
I think that many populations experience a better pattern of health or greater longevity in certain geographical areas because they have a cleaner food supply, often a more traditional food supply. So it's based on foods which are, again, less refined and have been part of their culture for thousands of years. You look at those populations, none of them are really big meat eaters. Most of them have some type of legume, some type of bean or lentil on a daily basis. They all eat a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. So, you know, I think that it's hard sometimes to separate faith from diet or spirituality from, you know, other lifestyles. But I think in general, they have a really clean diet and they practice some form of meditation or prayer where they're present for a part of the day.
Okinawa, amongst their elderly population, there's a lot of long livers, there's a lot of longevity, and very low rates of many chronic diseases. But what was, for me, most compelling was that they have exceedingly low rates of breast cancer and prostate cancer.
Same could be said for the Hunza Valley WEBRip and the Himalayas and some of the other places that have been found. Really, Hawaii is also a blue zone. Hawaiians have and not just the native Hawaiians, but literally like Americans who moved to Hawaii and other nationalities and races that moved to Hawaii have the lowest cancer rate of the 50 states. They have also the lowest death rate. Florida's the highest, Hawaii's the lowest.
There are certainly places that have higher average life expectancies than others. So Japan is almost at the top, I think, at around 83, 84 years. There's the Seventh-day Adventists, but they're more of a religion rather than a particular geographic location. They're concentrated in Loma Linda, California, but they're all over the country and are certainly a very mixed group when it comes to ethnicity. And their trick seems to be some exceptionally good health habits, and so they have average life expectancies of about 88, 89 years.
I love to look at what I've observed in other populations, but I also like to look at the research that as we get older, things don't have to go downhill. You can look at research that's based on muscle recruitment. You can look at research on blood pressure, bone density. There's some fascinating work that shows if you take care of yourself, if you don't bombard your genes, as we talked about, with an unhealthy diet, an unhealthy way of life, that as you get older, your blood pressure can go down, that your bone density can improve, that you can maintain that muscle mass you're told you're just going to lose. So I really think that centenarians and people of all ages should have hope that getting old isn't a sad story. It can really be a beautiful story.
Time and time again, people would ask me, but don't you think that at the end of the day, the reason that you're seeing such low rates of these diseases in various places is because genetically, this is a culture which is protected for whatever reason from this disease? And the easy answer to that is that we have tons of data at this point that when, for example, West Africans migrate to an urban area and start to eat an urban diet and have an urban lifestyle, they get colon cancer at the same rate as everybody else. And in fact, African Americans, many of whom can trace their ancestry back to West Africa, have some of the highest rates of colon cancer in the world and even higher rates than Caucasian Americans. So we know it's not genetics in that point because you look at your ancestors and they have very low rates. Same with Japanese Americans. They get breast and colon cancer the same as anybody else once they're living here in the US. And yet in Japan, incredibly low rates.
Very few cancers are actually genetic. It's like less than 3%, right? Why didn't we have a cancer epidemic 100 years ago if it's genetic, right? Why is it now 1 in almost every 2 people is going to develop cancer? Why? How come now? Why wasn't it like that 100 years ago if it's genetic? So that whole genetic story is falling apart under the weight of epigenetics. What the epigenetics are indicating is that there are lifestyle factors that are triggering the expression of the gene or suppressing it, right? So yeah, you can have a genetic weakness in a certain area, but it will never express itself unless you go out and you do as much booze as you possibly can, eat the worst food ever, run your body into the ground. Then that gene will express.
You try to make the best of it. You try to laugh. But basically, you argue with people for a living. You see a lot of unfortunate living situations. So a lot of negativity, and it can hammer away at your mood. It can definitely have its effects on you, stress-wise. When you get out, you definitely need a release. Some guys find it in good ways, and some guys find it in bad ways. And Life Alive is my only stop, and to be quite honest with you, with the way my day goes, it's like an oasis. She calls it an oasis. It's a Life Alive organic garden oasis, but it is like I go in there. It's peaceful in there. It's serene. The atmosphere is serene. Heidi goes way out of her way in terms of the hiring process to make sure people care about what they're doing and the message that they're getting across. They're not just serving food. And so she wants a well atmosphere in there. She's got the bulletin board. You're going to learn about other things in life, meditation, yoga, whatever it might be. They have different seminars in there. Going in there, I'm in tenement buildings all day and not the most beautiful lifestyles, and so after seeing negativity all day, it's really nice to be able to go in there if I get a half an hour to sit down and eat my meal, be around pleasant people that are trying on a daily basis to become more pleasant and more well, and so going in there is a real treat for me. A little bit of heaven on earth. Squash, kale, broccoli, corn, almonds, carrots, quinoa.
The most immediate changes that people can make right from the beginning is start making half of every plate of food that you consume fruits and vegetables, with fruit and vegetables predominantly coming from North America. That's one of the most important things anybody can do. Eat more fruits and vegetables, eat less meat, less dairy, really reduce that to a very small percentage of your plate. Cut a lot of the refined flours and sweeteners out of your diet completely, because those are undermining our health as much as any other dietary factor.
One of those categories of great medicines is raw foods. Getting back to raw foods and fresh juices and getting that prana back and life force energy that comes from real living plant cells instead of cells that have been exploded by heat or cells that have been fried or radiated or microwaved. So that's a big part of the work that I do, and that brings life back, right? Life comes from life, and live food makes you more living.
If an indigenous person, a hunter-gatherer, was to come into your kitchen and look around and see your food, what would they think? Would they be able to recognize where that food came from? So they come in and they look through your kitchen and they see the vegetables and the fruits, and they're like, yeah, we have vegetables and fruits. I recognize those things. And they see the seeds and nuts and like, yeah, we have those things. And they see the animal foods and they say, yeah, we hunt animals. But then they see the Roman noodles. Then they see the Lucky Charms. Then they see the Doritos. And there's a big disconnection. They can't recognize where those things came from. There's not a Dorito bush.
I eat a plant-strong diet. I get as many of my nutrients from plants as possible because they tend in that way to come with phytochemicals and multiple kinds of minerals and all kinds of nutrients that we need, our cells need, to function optimally.
I get home late at night, so I'll eat a really big salad. That's usually what I finish my night with, and it's like a serving bowl, like this, tons of greens. Avocado, some flax on there, pumpkin seeds, almonds, tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, onions. I mean, you name it. Any vegetable that you throw in front of me, if I can find it, I'm going to put it in there.
One thing that everybody could relate to, and I think can recognize, that green vegetables, for example, are particularly micronutrient dense and related to longer life and low rates of cancer. So no matter what kind of diet you're on and whatever you believe, you're probably not eating enough green vegetables.
I grew up very poor, so I had the worst of the worst food. Everything that was in a can and had no labels on it. And it was interesting because as I started to literally purge myself of foods that had, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, larvicides, chemicals, dyes, poisons, I actually realized that I was able to think clearer, that even my connection with, we'll say, God was just a bit more clear, and I started to change the way I had an outlook on life. So it really was just the catalyst. It was the ground floor of what was going to be, everything else was going to be built on.
You have the old adage, you are what you eat. But I take it a step further and say you eat what you are. Again, it starts with your green leafy vegetables, number one. Again, I know for myself, getting into, kale, collard greens, spinach, but also some of even your more bitter greens. You have your dandelion. I love turnip greens. I can't overstate the importance of eating green leafy vegetables.
I went to a Walmart, I went to a Safeway out there, I went to some other smaller stores, and what I realized is that many of these foods, in fact most of them, you can find really all over the country. Things like the dried beans and a lot of the greens and stuff, even the fruits and vegetables that are in season.
50 or 100 years ago, America spent 3 times as much on food as they do today as a percent of total take-home pay. And they're actually spending less on food today than they ever did before in history. Except we're spending 10 times more on medical care, don't forget. So we're spending more on medical care, but not as much on food.
Yes, ma'am. Fortunately, you guys got it today. Let's see. Any oranges?
The point is that we could grow food in our backyard. You know, green vegetables, collards and kale and mustard greens are not expensive. Zucchini's cheap, beans are cheap, rices are cheap.
Pinto beans every night, really, over the course of a lifetime, is going to work in your favor. You know, you don't need to have the meat, you don't need to have the animal protein, you don't need to have a lot of the heavily processed but maybe organic snacks. You know, they're more expensive because they're processed and they're packaged and there's a lot of marketing centered around them, but they're not necessarily anything you want to have on a regular basis. So I think that, you know, beans and rice and green leafy vegetables for a life are going to produce a greater overall quality of health than a diet that's much more complex but is centered around animal protein and heavily processed foods.
When you're eating healthy, you're satisfied with fewer calories. It actually becomes less expensive because you don't have to you're not driven to overeat anymore. And you don't have to eat for two, you can eat just for one person because the extra calories really feeds your doctor.
So this is, in fact, a budget way to eat healthy.
The food that we need to eat that's in the best form for the body to heal itself is food that's in a liquid form. You know, so we should start with our fresh coconut water, our fresh juices that we make, and when we use that, that creates a great balance in terms of giving the body what it needs nutritionally in a liquid form, whereas you know, you're looking at 95 to 99% water. Then the healing is quick.
With the juicing, you can concentrate the food, it's easily digested, it goes right into the tissues, into the cells where it belongs, and it immediately raises the level of nutrients so the body can start to heal.
When you're dealing with juices, you're talking 15, 20 minutes, it's in your bloodstream. When you're dealing with blended food, it's like you've chewed that thing 1,000 times. The whole food is still completely there. You've just accelerated to its end goal of being completely liquefied. And then once that's in your body and into your digestive tract, your body can absorb everything that was there. Again, instead of chewing 10 times, with the blended stuff, you've chewed it 1,000 times.
Towards the end of the year, I started to hear about this idea of a juice fast, an extended juice fast, which is when I decided to go on this crazy 100-day juice fast, where I had nothing but juice for 100 days. And by the end of that second year, I had lost another 100 pounds, literally cutting my body weight in half within 2 years' time. Safe, natural, skin repairing itself. And you know, I saw so many people that had come up that were gastric patients that had lost that kind of weight in maybe 3-4 months, but then we're having skin issues and different things like that. So it was really cool to take the time to really do it the right way, give myself lots of green juice, alkalize my body.
But our coconut water as a water is food and a water simultaneously. So when we drink that, we don't need a colonic, we don't need anything other than that. That will go and clean out our whole system.
Yeah, until you get the plates transferred over.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, man.
All right.
All right, man.
All right, I'll see you.
You're not gonna get beat up anymore.
Stay out of trouble, will you? How you doing? How's it going, ladies? Good. I truly believe that there's one fountain of youth, and this is it. I think that I feel like in the last 6 years, not only have I not aged, but I feel like I've grown more youthful. I turn 40 next summer, and I feel 25. The way it seeps into your life, I mean, I act like I'm 25. I do things that 25-year-olds do. I find myself drawn to 25-year-old people. It's really crazy. It's changed my life. It's the one thing that, the best decision that I've ever made in my entire life.
I think that if the fountain of youth does in fact exist, it exists inside of us, probably inside of our brains, in the way we look at life, our outlook on things, being positive, not becoming too cynical, not becoming, depressed with respect to how bad sometimes things look environmentally or with respect to our health. And I think that we all have that in us. I think that coupled with a diet which supports our biochemistry, the basics, you know, offering us more alkalinity, not an acid-loaded diet, keeping our blood sugar levels more in check. I think the fountain of youth comes from our outlook on life and how simple we can keep our diet.
Modern nutritional science has advanced to the point where we can live longer and in better health than prior years. Where the average American lives about 75 years old, or the average worldwide life expectancy is between 70s and between 75 and 80. Even the best population is in the 80, 81 is the very best, longest lived people. And I'm saying that I'm seeing sick patients come to me in their late 60s and 70s and are now in their 90s doing well, thriving because of excellent nutrition. We could add 20 quality years to people's life with excellent nutrition.
So many people would say that it takes a lot of willpower, and I've heard that a lot of times. Wow, it takes so much willpower to do something like that. And I found that it really doesn't. It's actually just a change of your will. What you decide is important in your life. So many times I've had conversations with people and say, what's your priorities? Is health your priority? And they say, yes, but when I'm at my family's, I end up eating this way, or when I'm out with my friends, I end up eating this way. And so as you start to reframe and look at your priorities and really see what you want for your life, and you put health first, all of a sudden all the decisions become very easy. When you're out and everybody's eating junk food, for example, you just say, okay, what am I gonna do? Let me look down my priority list. Oh, health is number one before maybe socialization or whatever that happens to be. And that's the choice that I'm gonna do.
I've seen so many individuals, once they realized that they could do it, that they were going to do it, drop a ton of weight, really change their biochemistry right to the core.
The day you decide you want to be well, you got to do it 100%, just like a cigarette smoker. Cigarette smoker can hear over and over again about how bad tobacco is and get all kinds of negative reinforcement. And they may practice going without cigarettes for 2 or 3 hours or so, but then the day comes and they say, I want to be different. I don't want to be a cigarette smoker anymore. And then they stop 100%. Same thing with the food. You can practice for a while if you want, but when you decide to really get your health back, to get your personal appearances back, then you do it 100%.
The tools to heal ourselves are always available, whether they are foods or movies or books or inspirational plays or whatever it is, or family time, or time with the grandkids, or whatever it is. The tools are there. It's just opening to it and just allowing it in. I really believe very strongly in stacking the odds in your favor whenever possible. Whenever it's possible to make a choice that will stack the odds in your favor for healing, do it. Make that little extra effort. For example, instead of just drinking the water, bless it. Take 1 extra second, bless the water, then drink it. It helps, it improves it. And if you start stacking those things on top of each other with every moment, ultimately, that's the kind of life that is a blessed life.
One night, I made the decision before I went to bed, this epiphany happened, where I was asking constantly over and over again, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why won't anybody help me? And started to shift the questions I was asking, because our brains operate on questions. And I began to ask, what is it that I need to do to change? What is it that I need to do to get better? And from asking those questions, I started to see all the different places in my life that I was not living up to my potential.
There's nothing more valuable than our body, than our temper. I mean, it's priceless. We cannot put a value on it. And if we believe that this is a one-shot deal, then I think we would be a lot more responsible with our food choices, because we understand that is our healing, that is our true medicine.
Thank you very much.
Try to help you with helpful cooking hints. But for the most part, all the stuff, chop up, put in a salad.
I eat it. I eat raw. I eat raw all the time. So this is all like,
You're in the right place.
yeah, this is perfect. Thank you.
The biggest obstacle, I think, right now to the average person that wants to get healthy is that it's been portrayed as something that's very complex, that you have to be really well educated to understand or to follow, and that it's expensive, and that it requires the use of extensive supplements or these so-called magic potions. And in fact, it's the simplest thing we could ever follow.
Every morning I make kale shakes.
Oh yeah.
I make them out. Sometimes I'll throw kombucha in with them to liquefy it. Sometimes I'll throw coconut water in there. Throw maybe like a lime, gets me out the door. Perfect. Puts a smile on my face for work for at least maybe like an hour. Then I have to swing back home and get another one. Awesome, I got you back.
Okay.
All right,
You got it,
all right,
man.
take care.
We'll see you around.
All right, take it easy. How you doing?
I made the decision to get well, and that's really what changed everything for me. Most times when people are diagnosed with a severe condition, they give up. They don't understand that you can make the decision to get well and do something about it.
The day I stood on the scale, it was, you're either saying yes to life or you're saying no to life. And for me, I was dying fast. You don't see many 400-pound, morbidly obese old people. So I realized, what's the decision that I'm making right now for my life? And that's when I made the switch and realizing I want to say yes to life, and there is hope for every single person out there. It's just one thought and decision away. The way you're thinking right now can be instantly changed, and you say, you know what? That's not the outcome I want for my life. I choose to enact my will and choose to look at health as my #1 priority. Without that, I'm not going to be able to play with my kids. I'm not going to be able to enjoy my partner. And then once you start to create those kinds of a technology or system, everything else just filters down through, you know, just kind of like dropping a marble in a game and watching it go through. All your decisions go through that path, and it actually becomes easy. And so many people have laughed when I say this, but losing 200 pounds was the easiest thing that I ever did in my life.
This here's the criminal bureau where my father used to work as a detective prior to passing. Main desk's up here. That would be a good show on television if these people would just sign a waiver. You know what I mean? Just sign it. That's what David Wolf should do. Sign a waiver. You're off the show, you know, and it's like 6 months, and you're going to be force-fed a raw food diet for 6 months. You go off it, you're off the show, and you don't get the $1 million at the end. And then take like 20 people and see how many go back at the end of 6 months. None of them will go back, right? They probably none would go. But maybe, who knows? Maybe some would go back. But that'd be an amazing way to get people to try it. Hi, honey. How are you, ladies?
You got a purple one. That looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Ahorita dejaría para acá. Can you get the 5-0?
The 5-0 bowl, yeah.
With some wheatgrass.
Yeah, how you doing? Want to get 2 5-0 bowls and 2 shots of wheatgrass.
Smalls or larges on the wheatgrass? I don't know.
Large.
Large. 2 larges. Anything else, guys?
No, that'll be all, thank you.
It's $28.89.
All right, it's on you. You make some money. You know, in the summer, he sits outside and eats, and when people drive by, you know, we're in the cruiser and everything, we always stop. And he just, first you see what he's putting in his body. This is colorful stuff, too, so it draws attention, as you can see. And if you just say hi to him, and he'll talk to you, right away, he's like, hey, you got to try this. Come inside, do this, do that. I mean, if you got the cure or something, you share it, right? And you believe in it because it happened to you, so. And that's why Eric's the way he is. That's why I see it. I mean, if you just look at the other color in this. We got carrots, corn, raw almonds. I love raw almonds. As beets. I'm gonna take a bite of this. Hold on. I mean, this is delicious. It's delicious. It has so much flavor. You eat cheeseburgers and crap like that, or like Chinese food. I'm not gonna say I have never had Chinese food, but you know, you're hungry an hour later. When you eat like this, you actually full like for 4 or 5 hours. It's actually, I think that's how people actually start limiting what they put in their body. So if you're not as hungry constantly all the time, you know, you just put less in your body.
If you want, I can jump up on this table. Want to see? You jump up on it? Ready?
Nice. That was great.
pretty cool. All right, it's good. You're still alive.
Well, thank you. It's good to know. I thought I was dead for a while.
That was excellent.